Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen who have joined us on this Dr. Fundi channel, joining us via Facebook, via YouTube, Twitter, or the Dr. Fundi website. My name is Fundi Lenyati. I'm the host on this channel. Today, I've got a special guest, Dr. Nozuko Mkabayi. I'm sure most people don't know that middle name. So Dr. Nozuko Mkabayi. But before I tell you more about her, let me just create a context as to why I've invited her today. Today is World Mental Health Day. 28 years ago, the World Federation of Mental Health, that was in 1992, they decided that the 10th of October of every year should be designated a World Mental Health Day, a day where awareness is created around issues of mental health and well-being, a day where there's focus on dealing with issues of stigma and discrimination that is often linked with ignorance around issues of mental health. So today is that day, is the 10th of October, and I had options to call in a specialist, in psychiatry or psychology, or to actually invite somebody who is living with a mental illness. And of the many people that I know who are activists in the area of mental health, the one person that I could think of was Dr. Nozuko Mkabayi, who is a qualified medical doctor, a mother of 3 boys. She hails from the same town that I come from, which is Umtata. She actually went to the same high school that I went to, St. John's College, where she actually was the best debating student there, in the whole of that homeland, because those days it was still a homeland. She was a sub-editor at our school magazine. And she obtained very good results for her matric, such that she was easily accepted at the University of Natal Medical School to come and do medicine. She got her B aggregate, matric pass. And when she got to Natal, that was in 1989, the year I was doing final year medicine in 1989, that was 31 years ago. She came in as a young first year medical student, full of energy, full of life. She made friends with almost everybody, because of her personality. And she did medicine from 1994 and qualified, from 1989 and qualified in 1994. So she did medicine in record time. She did not repeat a year. During that 6-year period, she obtained a number of prizes. She got an Adcock Ingram Prize for the best pharmacology student when she was doing 3rd year. At final year, she got a most improved student overall. That was in 1994. She also played basketball. I don't understand, because she's not one of the tallest people around, but somehow she played first team basketball. I think there must have been some corruption there. I don't believe that she could have been good in basketball, so when she qualified in 1994, she decided that she's going to go to Gauteng and actually be an intern. So she became an intern or a houseman at Natalspruit Hospital, which was one of the popular, hospitals in Gauteng those days. When you had your internship in Natalspruit, you were sure to gain a lot of experience. Practical experience. Was in other hospitals, you would be there more as a vampire, pulling bloods in the morning, and in the afternoon, you just phoning for results with little experience. So Natalspruit was a balance because you got a lot of practical experience if you trained there as a medical intern. And after that, she has done many things. She had a stint in private practice, running her own practice in Soweto. That was not really fulfilling to her. She wanted to go back and study. And so she became a registrar in pediatrics for a certain period. But due to some life events, she had to put a pause on her training as a registrar in pediatrics. And then she came back and continued as a medical officer, in pediatrics. And at a certain point, again, she went and joined the government sector in the Eastern Cape as a director, in charge of audits and clinical practice. And at a certain point, she also became a researcher within the perinatal HIV research unit at BARA, working with people like Dr. Or Prof. Glenda Gray those days. And so she has really done many things. She went back to finish her training as a registrar, but then she did not write her final exam, but she trained, finished, and she has picked up a lot of certificate courses in between. Advanced pediatric life support in 2012, advanced trauma life support in 2013, a diploma in HIV management in 2006, management course, certification in good clinical practice in 2004. So she's an all-rounder, but her love when it comes to medicine is around children. She just loves, taking charge and looking after, the young ones. So even today, she has just come into Johannesburg from Cape Town, where she was working overnight at the Karl Bremer Hospital, looking after the little ones. So Dr. Mkabayi, with all that introduction, welcome.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Dr. Nyati. But I must just say, the introduction, I think because I come from Umtata, I've told you that even my little one, my 9-year-old, knows Dr. Fundi. Because in this house now, my big one was assisting with setting me up because doctors are not really good with technology. And I must say, I'm sorry. I was trying to get in because I didn't want to bother him because he was busy with things, but I failed dismally. So I think I shared with you about 2 weeks ago that even my 9-year-old knows Dr. Fundi because Dr. Fundi, we swear by Dr. Fundi. And because he's going to be a vet, he needs to understand medical issues. So I've been following Dr. Fundi, and this household is following Dr. Fundi, but I've never heard such an elaborate introduction. So thank you. I think it's because I come from Umtata and I come from and we used to, you forgot to say, when I got to medical school, I was 16, and you are the ones that actually introduced us and my friends to the party scene. So you are responsible for me being still a party girl.
Yes, indeed. In 1989, when you arrived at medical school, you were very young. You were 16. And there was a group of you, I think about 3 of you guys, who were just, unstoppable, in terms of your energy levels. Exactly. But anyway, Doc, today it's about you. All right. I've invited you because it's World Mental Health Day. And there's no better way to create awareness than to actually listen to a story of somebody who is living with mental illness, who has conquered a lot of challenges relating to mental illness. It is better than having, me just talking and rattling, the symptoms of this, the symptoms of that. You are going to be sharing with us your life story. Okay. I'm not just going to focus on the, illness, or the condition rather. I want to share with people your story as Dr. Mkabayi. where were you born? But we won't spend a lot of time, but people must have an idea. Where were you born? What kind of family were you born into? And what are the influences that you got out of the upbringing within that family and the community where you grew up? Things that even today are a compass on how you approach life. So
thank you.
Over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Nyat. You know, it's amazing. I intended on starting there. I didn't know that you're going to start there. I intended on starting there because today is a very somber occasion in my family back home in Lusikisiki. Lusikisiki is in the Pondoland, Mampondweni. I know a couple of weeks ago you interviewed Dr. Simpwe Mandesilo, who is from Ebizana, Mbizana, and Professor Lungile Pepeta, who is still my hero to this day as a pediatrician with all the work that he did in the Eastern Cape. And I worked with him when I was in East London and he was in Port Elizabeth. He also is from Bizana. So that's the area of the Eastern Cape called Pondoland. And there's also the big greats like Winnie Madikizela Mandela and O.R. Tambo, they come from that area. Today the somber occasion because today my sister was buried. In the African sense, we don't have cousins. So this is my first cousin. Utatomdala wami ngumfundisi Silwanyana. Abantu abaninzi ke ewisile in the Methodist Church, they will know Reverend Silwanyana. Reverend Silwanyana is 83 years old, and he shared with me 2 weeks ago when I went home that he started ministry at the age of 25. So he is very well known in the Methodist Church. He's gone right to the top of the Methodist Church and is now retired and living at home. So my sister, cancer, he was battling breast cancer. And it's amazing, it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And I honestly don't believe there's coincidences. But she was such a fighter. She fought for 13 years. But then in around August, she was living and working in Cape Town as a librarian, independent girl, not married, doing things on her own, that didn't have children. She was fine. And then in August, we were told that nothing could be done for her, so she had to go home. So we went to see her because it was close to the end. And so today she was laid to rest. So we come from Lusikisiki, and I'd like to dedicate this day to her because I honestly don't believe there is coincidence. I tried the whole week. She passed on Monday. And from the day she passed on, I was trying to get home and I couldn't. It just was impossible to get home. They even gave me the call off. I was supposed to be on call last night. I was given the call off because they knew I had to bury my sister. But the flights and the logistics just didn't work. And now I'm sitting here and I'm saying, thanks be to God, because knowing the network, LCCG especially, we probably would not be having this interview.
Yes.
So I'm dedicating this interview to her. So my father comes from the rural Emantlaneni, Ilale talks Emantlaneni. Ukhona ke inkosi ke apha yazibayo apha eRhawutini yaphaya uphumezi kwapha Emantlaneni. Inkosi yami ke leyo ke inkosi Phumezi. Uyaziwa kakhulu ke ngubhutona osemncinci ke owaziwayo ngabantu abasebatsha kuba ke akabi nankosikazi uhlala apha eSandton. It's in the deep rural Tsiki. We travel an hour from town, from the city, which is 1.5 hours from Mthatha, the city center of Transkei. You still have to travel 1.5 hours through Libote, Port St. John's to get to the Siki, and through very treacherous roads to get there. It's very scenic, but very treacherous. A lot of people have lost their lives. Now, when you get to town, you still have to travel another hour to get to Emantlaneni. The gravel road is 30 kilometers, but it takes an hour to get there. Dog. We still use what is called iguruguru. Iguruguru are those vans that take about 30 people or 20 people, maybe I'm exaggerating. And in the van, there will be the vegetables, there will be the sheep, there will be the chickens, there'll be everything in the van because the people are going to town and they hardly go to town. So I come with that part of the Eastern Cape. But my grandfather was uneducated at all. He had 6 children, but he made it a point to educate all his 6 children. So out of those 6 children, my father was the last born, and 5 became teachers, as was in the olden days. My Utatom Dala, the eldest, passed away at 90 years old in 2013, and my father passed away quite young. He was 53 in 2002. When I was at medical school, I was 20 years old. So I grew up in this family of a community where there was never really a nuclear family. In my nuclear family, it was just me, my brother, my mother, and my father. So my father was very unique in the sense that, firstly, he didn't do teaching. He chose to do bookkeeping. He became an accountant for a law firm, a white law firm at the time, Mtata, John Blakeway and Lepan. So he was their accountant. He did their books. I mean, I never used to understand what my father does, but there was a typewriter at home. There was always accounting things happening. He was such a dynamic guy that while he was doing that, he was also playing soccer. He was playing first team for Tembu Royals in the 70s, 60s and 70s. And then he also played for Liverpool United. Well, I'm told, you're saying I'm short, you don't understand how to play basketball. I'll tell you the story. But my father was short, take after my dad. And they say, well, I also do remember because we had to go and watch these soccer matches and watch him play. He used to be center, and he was a dynamite on the field. So after that, he went to Liverpool United. After that, he became president of Liverpool United. And so my parents were well educated for that time. My mother was a nurse at first, and then she developed some allergies, and she got some bronchospasm from some penicillin and drugs. Then she had to leave nursing in her final year of training as a sister. And then she went and did teaching. She didn't like teaching. And then she went to do admin. And so when she retired, she was a personal assistant to the KSD mayor. And she was so determined that at the age of 60, she got a degree. Because in the olden days, you didn't have matric, you had a JC. So when my father died, she decided she actually wanted to be independent. She needed to have her own car. So she didn't have a license, but she was relying on my father. So she went and got a license in her 50s. She got a degree in her 60s. But the one thing that I always felt she should have got was a man. She never got a man. So she's still widowed. So she's still living at home with my brother. My brother is now 50.
No, but
my brother is, I'm sorry?
She had a responsibility to grow you guys up. After
no, when my father died, my brother was already qualified as a teacher. He went and studied he did 1 year, and he went to Durban Westville. He did B pedagogics. And he majored in English and speech and drama. So we're just a very unique family. So he's now a teacher in Mpondoland, in Malin. He's been there for more than, I don't know, donkey's years since he started teaching. He's fine. He lives in Umtata. He's married. He's got a family there. So that's our nuclear family.
So now, if you look at these two parents of yours, Doc, what would you say are the values that you took from mom and those that you took from dad to make you the person you are today?
All right. Well, firstly, maybe I'll take it a bit one step back and say, for most of my life, for the first 4 or 5 years of my life, my father was my hero, because my father was this guy who lit up every room. My father was this loud guy who was the life of the party. He used to bring these soccer guys to our home. There used to be parties, there used to be brides. And I mean, at the time, it wasn't really done. And there were also ballroom dancers of the time, the champions. So we used to go to their ballroom dancing competitions. We used to go to live boxing and all these things that were really not usual. And we didn't live in a township or Eslalini. We lived in Norwood, which was a suburb at the time. And I started school. I even went to preschool, which was very unusual. There was a preschool in Norwood that was called Wamamundaba. And Wamamundaba produced a lot of doctors. One of her grandchildren, Dr. Ndaba, was the Eastern People's very well known. So I went there. So I really had a good upbringing. My father was out of the box. I think that's what I can say. That's what everybody who sees me, firstly, I look like my father physically. well, so you can see that my father was handsome because I'm not exactly
well, what's
yeah,
phone?
I am pretty dark. I know, you don't have to tell me, I know that. So I look like my father physically, and I have my father's wit, I have my father's out of the boxness, and I have my father's craziness, because it only dawned on me many years later after it passed on that he actually had bipolar mode disorder, which is what I have. And later on in life, we did not have a good relationship because he started drinking. He was not a man that drank when my mother married him. And for about 4 or 5 years, he never drank alcohol, he never smoked. And then he started drinking heavily. And with the drinking came the physical abuse on my mother and on us. And it just didn't end well. So when I left home at 16, I thank God I was picked up by Umshengu Shabalala, my late husband. I actually never went home. I used to spend, I know it doesn't sound good. And now at Carl Bremer, I'm sending every teenage pregnancy to the social worker. And I'm thinking, but actually I was at medical school at 16 and I was spending every weekend with Umshengu. They took me on as their daughter. And I was spending every holiday with them doing research at university, because I was avoiding going home. Not because, yes, well, I was in love with the men, but the main reason was that I did not want to go to that home, because that home was very dysfunctional.
Yes.
So that was my father. And when he passed on, I actually wasn't speaking to him. It was so bad that I felt he had destroyed our family. And I felt my mother should have left. And my mother actually did live for some time, for 3 years. She left and she went back to him. And in that 3 years, my father had 2 children. In fact, the reason that my mother left was because my father had impregnated somebody else when I was 8. So now I've got 2 extra siblings, half siblings. And in the African sense, there's no half siblings. And the amazing thing is that my little brother who comes after me, who was the reason for the break of my parents' marriage, is the guy that I'm closest to in the whole family. So that's the family I come from. On the other hand, my mom is very quiet. She just wants things to be done in order. She doesn't want things. She wants order, and she doesn't want the spectacle. And I'm sure she won't even watch this interview, even if people say she must watch it.
Yeah. No, it's okay. You will watch it one day.
Maybe, yeah.
And so that's about your dad. So your mom, what would you say are the 2 or 3 things or values again, or principles of life that you like say these ones is sure from my mom?
Okay, my mom is a black and white kind of person. There's no gray, to a fault. And I've actually picked that up as well. There's no gray areas in my life. My mom, when I turned 15, I was in standard 9. She sat me down and she had this conversation with me about contraception and boyfriends. And I mean, in those days, that wasn't done at all. And at school, there was no LO, and my friends had not had these conversations with their moms. And she was like, I can see now you probably are having a boyfriend. And yes, I did actually have a boyfriend, but I wasn't thinking that far. And she was saying, I don't want any children. You've said you want to go to medical school. So this is the plan. I've already called the clinic, because she worked for the municipality. And I've said, when you go there, if you do go there, they mustn't call me. They must just give you what you need. So I'm like that with my children as well. I call it speed. If you need condoms, here are condoms. If you are a bit funny, I'm gonna do a drug test on you. If I'm not happy, I am not happy. If I'm not happy with the choice of career, my son, my second born, will tell you, I wasn't quite sure what he was choosing. I phoned the head of the institution. So that's what I got from my mom, that you need to be just straight. And also from my mom, I got perseverance, because I told you that she got a degree at 60. And she still had another 5 years of a good quality life as a person who now got a better salary and who became responsible for the municipality of KSD in her latter years.
So what I'm picking up, from all that you have said, Doc, is that education was one of the most important things in your family. Whether I'm looking at your dad I'm looking at your mom, but education, it seemed to be the thing that was like
It was
everybody.
the only thing.
Yeah,
It
it
was the
was.
only thing.
Yes, but also a sense of independence. That yes, you can go and get married, but you must be able to support yourself, and an element of interdependence. But not be a kind of person who's 100% dependent. On your partner. Oh, lovely. I think, Doc. Let's now focus on the issue of your diagnosis. I want us to get there because most of the time I want us to spend it there. So, at what you've already mentioned that you think your dad was somebody who was suffering from bipolar mood disorder, who most probably was not diagnosed. All right, but we'll come back to that. Now, for you, at what point, did you get to be diagnosed that you have bipolar mood disorder?
All right, thank you. Firstly, I'll say this diagnosis is not an easy diagnosis at all. And even more so because I was a doctor who knew a lot of stuff around psychiatry. So I was an unusual diagnosis in the sense that I diagnosed myself. And I remember vividly, and coming back from Cape Town this morning, I actually shed a tear because I was like, this is so much deja vu because I diagnosed myself on a flight going to Cape Town, sitting next to my then husband. This was in 1997, 22 years ago, in December. We were going on our first year anniversary. We had been married 1 year, and we decided I was in private practice. He was a young attorney, and then we decided let's just go to Cape Town for a holiday, and we were going to meet friends there. And on the plane, I just was not okay. I started crying. And out of the blue, I just was not okay. And even in that trip, I was very irritable. I was shouting at people that were serving us at the restaurant, and it was out of keeping with the person that I was usually a very calm person, although I was a party girl, but I wasn't a person that really screamed and shouted. And I was very like that in that trip. And I don't take alcohol, I don't take any substances. So that was not the case. So when the trip ended, I then went to the psychiatrist myself because the trip ended, and then we went to home to Claremont in Durban to spend with my husband's family. And then on the 24th of December, I didn't tell anybody. I just said I was going to buy some drinks at this bar, and I checked myself into the hospital, and because I felt I can't go on with Christmas. I felt I'm gonna lose it on Christmas Day with all the family in front of family. I'd rather be admitted and get a diagnosis. So I checked myself in at St. Aidan's Hospital on the 24th of December without my husband knowing. And I was able to do that because I had session there, I had locum there. And then I called my friend of the time, Dr. Bingagan, she's well known. She's a physician in PE. She's talking a lot about COVID because she had COVID initially, in the initial stages. So she was doing her registrar time. She was training to be a specialist in Durban. So I called her and I said, Pinky, I am here and I'm admitting myself, and the nurses here are refusing. They say there's nothing wrong with you. So she eventually called a psychiatrist for me. Thank God there were psychiatrists that could work on Christmas Day. So one psychiatrist came out, Dr. Naidu, and he called my husband and he said, no, he doesn't think it's bipolar. Maybe I was stressed because the practice had been broken into. And he gave me some mild medication for anxiety and some sleeping tablets. So that's how it started. But 6 months down the line, they had to agree with me that it was bipolar mood disorder. So it took 6 months of on and off trial.
A definitive diagnosis to be made.
Get a definitive diagnosis of bipolar. And that's the usual with patients, even with the best psychiatrist, it's not an easy diagnosis to make. So they eventually made the diagnosis then mid 1998.
Yes. Now, just on that point, Doc, obviously there's different types of bipolar mood disorder. Just for the benefit of the people who are watching, who may not be medical people, You know, bipolar mood disorder that you are talking about, before it used to be called manic depression, but it's a mental health condition that causes extreme mood swings, that may include emotional highs, which is what we call mania or hypomania, and also emotional lows, which is depression. And when you become depressed, you may feel sad, hopeless, lose interest or pleasure in most activities. And when your mood shifts to mania or hypomania, you may feel euphoric, full of energy, sometimes unusually irritable. And these mood swings can affect your sleep, they can affect your energy, they may affect your activity, judgment, behavior, and ability to think clearly. All right. So having described then, that which is just the overview for the benefit of the audience. Which of the, there's bipolar type 1, there's bipolar type 2. Did they put you in any of those?
Yes, from the beginning, I knew that I was a bipolar type 1 because mine was mainly characterized by irritability and insomnia, which is not sleeping. So the main part of bipolar type 1 is the mania, which is the high, or hypomania, which is a high, but that is not as high as the mania, but it's still a high. And so you're swinging between extremes of mood. There's very high mood, there's very low mood. So you are not stable in the middle. So that's why it's called bi, because bi is two, and polar is two ends. So it's bipolar, one end, one end. So I am a type 1 bipolar.
Just,
that is a difficult one to manage.
You must not, as you are talking, for the benefit of the audience, I'll, just add here and there, just to, yes, if you don't mind. So the type 1 that you were diagnosed with, you already said that the major thing there is the manic episode. You are excessively happy,
Oh, yeah.
And that may be preceded by a slight elevation in mood beyond the normal, but not excessive, or sometimes may even be preceded by some depression. So when you are talking about what you experienced when you were coming from Cape Town, there was also, an element of depression there as you were crying for no particular reason. But the type 2, it's normally, preceded by a major depressive episode and a hypomania, episode, but you don't get the excessive, mania. All right. So yours is the type 1. Now, obviously, because of the extreme mood swings, from mania to depression, obviously there's challenges. Each one of those is a challenge on its own. To have both of those extremes, it's a challenge. However, they also say here it's important for people to know that type 2 is not necessarily a milder version of type 1. But anyway, it is fine. So I just wanted people to understand. So you were diagnosed with this condition. You thought you had it. It was not exactly diagnosed immediately, but 6 months later, it was diagnosed. When they eventually confirmed that you have bipolar mood disorder type 1, how did you receive the diagnosis?
I was ecstatic because then I knew that I could be helped. Because while they were saying it's not, they were not giving me bipolar medication. And remember, I was already a doctor in private practice. And although I was not a psychiatrist, the patients start with GP. So I was a GP in Soweto. And GPs, as you know, you're a family physician. We see everything and everything. And the gatekeepers. So I was already seeing a lot of patients that I was referring to psychiatrists at the time in Soweto, at the Lesedi Clinic. So for me, it meant that I could get the treatment that would work for me. And it also meant that I got affirmation that what I felt was off, which my husband was kept saying, no, because really, no one really wants to have a wife that's got bipolar. And,
Yes.
and actually, no one wants to have a relative that's got bipolar. No one wants to have an employee that's got, no one, bipolar has got such a bad connotation. So he didn't want to hear this word. So for me, it meant I was affirmed and then I could get the help that I needed. Because while people were saying, including the psychiatrists, I even went to Professor Kize, who was the head of department in my alma mater. Yes, and I said, oh, by the way, you actually forgot to mention that I also got the psychiatry prize. And I think that's, yes, I did in sixth year. And I think there was a reason why I got the psychiatry prize, because God knew that I was going to be a psychiatric patient. And while I was doing a director work in head office, one of my responsibilities was all the psychiatric hospitals in the Eastern Cape, and they didn't know my story. They just gave me the psychiatric hospitals, including the forensic ones. So I actually got to understand, even on the government side, how psychiatry is supposed to be run. But now coming back now to your question, how did I receive it? I received it very well. And then started now the treatment, the right treatment, and the right psychotherapy. Because with treatment, how you treat the conditions of mental illness, there is treatment which is medical, but very key as well is the counseling, which is called psychotherapy, and also the family, what is
social therapy.
The psychosocial. It's called psychosocial because then it involves your family, because we live with family.
They need to understand the condition.
They're not understanding what you're going through because you've changed. Remember, my husband made me when I was 16, that 16-year-old we're describing, and he really thought he was getting the best cream of the crop girl. And the next thing, he marries this cream of the crop, and 1 year later, she's got bipolar.
Yeah,
he didn't really like it.
Yeah,
he didn't like it at all.
All right, but obviously that's normally as a result of inadequate understanding of the condition.
Yeah.
Right. I'm assuming then that you made it your business to actually, educate him about the condition, and also the fact that it's a lifelong, mental health condition that is manageable. It is manageable, but it's lifelong. So he needed to understand that. So did he get to a point where he understood?
Yeah, well, I think, as you know my husband quite well, you were friends, Dr. Fundi. They always say, even my in-laws, I think they still think that ngesixhosa ndamdlisa. We wished him with some gorobela.
Yes, yeah.
Because my husband understood everything about me, even if he didn't understand it, but he loved me enough to make sure that he would understand it. So yes, he went to every psychiatric visit with me. He went to every psychologist visit with me. He even fought my battles when I was at West Medical School studying. When I had episodes, and there was a time when he got ill, because he later got ill and passed away. So when he started getting ill, he was not that ill. And because I reported to my bosses that I needed to go see the oncologist with my husband, and he was fine. He was driving himself to the oncologist. He was still working as a CEO. So this was a fine man. So I reported to my bosses that I need the day off. And then within a week, I was called to Joburg Den by the head of department then, and I was told they're relieving me of my registrar duties so that I can take care of my husband. I'm like, what husband? My husband is just got a diagnosis, but he's not ill. So my husband, I phoned him, and he's like, no, you're not living.
So you meant that he was not incapacitated. Yes, he had the diagnosis.
He
was not incapacitated. He was functional.
He lived at almost another 2 years. This was just a visit to the doctor to hear about his planned treatment. But already, this is where the stigma now comes in. Already at that level of saying to my professors, I've got a husband that's ill. That's ill, that needs me to support him today, only today. Already they're saying, because you have bipolar, you're not gonna cope. That was the message. Can't cope with registrar time, bipolar, because this is also what I do. Every job I come into, I say it up front, so that they know that this is what I live with. So that if there's an issue, up front, I do that. So you can't have bipolar, be a registrar with 2 small children, and the husband has just been diagnosed with cancer. So my husband, being the kind of person that he was, he dropped everything I was doing in his meeting. He came straight to Johannesburg General Hospital. So he was my advocate in that sense. He fought my battle. And he was like, my wife wants to be a pediatrician just because she has bipolar. I am an attorney. He actually threatened them. He says, I'm an attorney. I'll take you to court. And you're not going to do that. So he was that kind of husband, was very, very supportive. And the nature of bipolar that you didn't mention, Dr. Nyat, is that in most mental illnesses, but bipolar in particular, there's an element of denial, a big element of denial. It takes a long time for you get to actually accept it for the diagnosis, which is why the psychiatrists of 1997 were saying most bipolar patients, in fact, they don't really want the diagnosis. So you come in, you're presenting yourself, you can't do that. So there's denial, and there's also what is called lack of insight. So you don't really know the extent of your illness. You're ill, but you don't realize how ill you are. Lack of insight, there's also lack of judgment. So those are the parts of the bipolar where you tend, when you are ill, not every day, but when you are uncontrolled, with mania in particular, which is the bipolar type 1 that I have, then you can get into dangerous things. You can spend all your money in the bank. You can even have with people that they've had sexual relations with people that they don't know because they're not actually quite there. You know, I know some people even contracted HIV during a manic episode. So there's also those issues that come in when you are ill.
Yes. No, let me just summarize what you just said, Doc. That during the manic episode, that episode of extreme happiness, you are normally abnormally upbeat, very jumpy, increased activity, high energy levels, sometimes agitated, exaggerated sense of well-being and self-confidence, decreased need for sleep, unusual talkativeness, racing thoughts. Your brain is working overtime, firing on all cylinders, distractibility, sometimes poor decision making. For example, going on buying sprees, taking sexual risks, or making foolish investments. So you've actually, said, and that's on the manic or hypomanic side. But when it's on the depression side, you've got a depressed mood, feeling sad, empty, hopeless, losing interest on things that used to interest you, having insomnia or hypersomnia, that is sleeping too much, restlessness or slowed behavior, fatigue or loss of energy, sometimes feeling worthless, or having excessive or inappropriate guilt, and sometimes decreased ability to think and concentrate, or being indecisive, and sometimes they may even be, suicidal ideation. So each of these extremes has got distinct, presentations. And obviously, like the one that you said, is largely the type 1, which is mainly the mania with some hypomania and depression, but it's largely mania. Yes.
And I must also add, which I think is also important, that you are born with the condition. It's a genetic, often there's a genetic component to it. Yes, like I discovered later that my father actually had it, but it might skip a generation. So it might not be the parent, it might be the grandparent, or it might be the aunt, or it might be an uncle. So the psychiatrist's history, as you well know, is a very detailed history. And just on history, they often pick up the relative who actually had it. And because we're Africans and people didn't believe that there was psychiatry, a lot of our fathers and our mothers and our aunts and uncles were undiagnosed and untreated. So hence they end up alcoholics, they end up dropping out of work and all that. The things that come with mental illness.
So they are saying that it's most common, bipolar is most common in people who have a first degree relative, such as a sibling or a parent. Although your dad was not diagnosed, but now that you know better, you think he was an undiagnosed,
Actually, he was so clever that he was diagnosed and he hid it from us. He hid it so well that he died in 1992. What am I saying? 1992 when I was 20 and doing 4th year. And then when I checked with medicine cabinet, because I was already in medical school having done pharmacology, I saw that he was on hypertension medication. He died he had a hypertensive stroke, a major bleed. That's how he died. But then in his drug cabinet, there was epilim. Epilim, as I knew it, was a drug that treated epilepsy. So I asked my mother, when did my father get epilepsy? She said, no, your father never had. Remember, my mother was a nurse. She said, no, your father never had epilepsy. And I let it lie. And then in 2005, I remember distinctly, I was admitted in one of the hospitals in Joburg. And the doctor says, we've tried you on several drugs. I'd like now to try epilim. And then the penny dropped. And I said, oh, wow, my father was on epilim. Then it means it was being used as the mood stabilizer. So he had bipolar. And then the psychiatrist looks at me strangely and says, Nozuko, as intelligent as you are, I mean, I've been looking after you for so many years. You mean you never realized it? I'm like, no. So he actually was diagnosed, but he just didn't share it with us.
Oh, yes. Okay. So then
and coming to then the family, and then it transpired later on, because I've got 3 children, that one of my children also has bipolar mood disorder type 1. And us being, well, they don't have a choice. I remember one mother who also has bipolar mood disorder cautioning me about not talking about my child on social media. I don't talk about my children's stories. It's his stories if he wants to share it. But I think that I've got one of my children has got the condition. Because it's important, even that message, to say to people, if you have a mental condition, you watch out, because it might be in one of the children. And also, if you hide it, I feel if I'm hiding it, yes, I'm an advocate, I'm a mother, he's now an adult, he's got his own decisions to make about his health. But now if I'm hiding it, I'm making it wrong. I'm actually stigmatizing.
You're actually perpetuating the issues of stigma, you know.
Absolutely. Because I'm saying there's something wrong with you, so let's hide it. If he wants to share about it, it's fine. If he doesn't want to share, it's fine. But I must say, he also has the condition, he's taking medication, he's doing well at school, everything is fine. Yes. And also there are other mental issues that are associated with bipolar in the next generation. My other child has got ADD and ADHD. In fact, I've got three boys. One has got bipolar mood disorder. The second one has got ADD, attention deficit disorder. The third one, attention.
Don't say which one has got what, doc.
No, I'm not counting. I'm not counting the first, second, third. I'm saying 1, 1, 1, and I'm saying these are interrelated.
Okay. Yes.
And we need to watch out for our children.
Yes. So, I mean, here from literature, they say the exact cause of bipolar disorder is unknown, but there are several factors, and one of those is the genetics, and researchers are still trying to find the gene that actually causes the bipolar mood disorder. So there's a strong genetic, a connection. All right, doc. So because you already know the condition, it was easy for you to diagnose yourself. It was easy for you to accept, and it was just a matter of making sure that it is controlled. Now, you then were stable on treatment. I want to find out, are there any triggers that you have that when this and this happens, it normally triggers a relapse? Because I've had a number of people who are living with bipolar will tell you that there are triggers that may bring this thing, the attack, or sometimes there may be things you are not aware of that your immediate family members may notice, and they know when this and this happens, she's gonna get an episode.
Well, the one trigger for me, and it's been a bone of contention with all my psychiatrists who treated me from Durban to Joburg to East London, is the night work. The night work. So I've been told for the past 22 years that you cannot do night work if you have bipolar mood disorder, because it messes up your sleep cycle. You need to sleep, because once you miss one day of sleeping, then it messes the sleep-wake cycle.
Your biological clock.
But I've been very stubborn about it, because pediatrics is my first love. So even if you go to private practice, actually you work more in private practice than in the public sector. So I will not go to private practice as a pediatrician. You get woken up every day, every night by mothers. So this is my first love. So I've said to the psychiatrist, let's make it work for me. So we do make it work. So on the night that I am on call, I don't take the dose for the night, and I'm usually sleeping. So the night work, so the people that work nights usually then would have to go to their employee assistance program and say they need to be accommodated in that way, which I think another important part of the discussion.
Reasonable accommodation. It's actually something that is part of the Labor Relations Act. It's part of the Schedule 8 Code of Good Practice on the management of incapacity and disability in the workplace. Employers, they need to understand, the nature and the severity of an employee's incapacity. Having understood, they then need to reasonably accommodate, an employee. It's your right to be reasonably accommodated so that you can be productive, within that accommodated, environment. Not just because of the diagnosis, then people say out, So otherwise, that's then, a form of dismissal that is actually considered to be an unfair type of dismissal. So employers, especially if you have disclosed upfront that I am living with this clinical condition, all right? From time to time, I may need reasonable accommodation, and it's important. Also, those employers that have got an EAP program, Employee Assistance Program, it's important that they work closely with you to provide the ongoing psychotherapeutic, or psychosocial support, because over and above the pharmacotherapy, that is the medication, it's also important that the counseling, the counseling, usually more counseling coming from a clinical psychologist, things like, cognitive behavior therapy and other types, of interventions. So it's very important to disclose. It's very important for employers to reasonably accommodate. In fact, it's not a choice, it's a must, because if they don't do that, that's unfair labor practice. So Doc, you can continue. So in the years that you have been diagnosed, in your various roles that you have played, you've always disclosed. Have you at any point, you've already mentioned the issue when you were at Wits, where there was some form of discrimination. Have you experienced any, overt or covert, overt or covert discrimination, or stigmatization as a result of the fact that you are living with a bipolar mood disorder?
Dr. Nyati, it's an everyday thing, every day of my life, everywhere. Because, like you mentioned, at 16, you met me, I was not diagnosed with bipolar, but I've always been a flamboyant girl. So when you are in a meeting or in a ward round, I'm very expressive. Like, I talk like this. This is me. I've taken my meds, I promise. And I did sleep last night. But I'm very, so you can just tell. Medical school and medical students and doctors are generally laid back people. And firstly, I wear bright colors. I'm floral. I'm just different. I've got nails, colored nails. So it's there. The discrimination is there without being said. But I'll just go straight to the one that was the biggest. It's always been there. And I've always sort of had to prove myself more than my peers. It may be because I've spent most of my life in academia, save for the time in research and the time at head office in the Eastern Cape, which was about 4 years in total. So most of my time I've actually spent, maybe minus 10 years, 6 years in private, the other 4 years. So most of the other 16 years of my life I've spent in academia pursuing this degree. And this degree takes 4 years. And for somebody who was as intelligent as I am still, because my IQ has not changed, it's still taking me. I have not got the actual papers. You know, having started to knock on the door of vets in 2001, I should have been a professor by now. I should be taking over a professor, you know, professor at Barra, that big professor at Barra. I should be now taking over usithembiso befana ngokusebenzisa ngoku ndijonge into yoba ndi-super specialist ngoku ndijonge laa post yakhe, you know, because
neonatologist.
Yes, no, but in whatever, I'm saying I should be head of department.
Yeah.
Because of my age and my experience. But I don't even have the basic paper.
Yeah.
And most of that has been because of stigma. So I will dive straight to 2016. Where even the stopping. All right.
Wait, doc. Sizawungena apho.
All right.
You know, we're gonna get to that one. It's a biggie. It's important to address it, but I want us, just before then, we were talking about discrimination in the workplace. I want us to talk about discrimination and stigmatization in society. What experience have you had around that? That's one question. The other one, you lost your husband. Was it 2003 or 2004? I can't remember the 2005 from you know from colon cancer. You know, and he was still young, under the age of 40.
He was
something that is unusual.
Yeah, he was 37.
Yes, something that is unusual, because most people diagnosed with you know, colorectal cancer are usually people who are 50 and above. But we are seeing more and more people who are younger, especially amongst Black people, who are actually diagnosed much earlier. All right. So he was one of those people who was diagnosed at a young age, must have been around 35, you know, when he got diagnosed. And he lived for 3 years before, you know, he succumbed, you know, to the condition. Now, that incident, because you were already diagnosed, how did it affect, you know, that incident of a spouse who was terminal? How did it affect the stability of your clinical condition?
All right. He was diagnosed. You were very right. Actually, he hit it on the nail. He was diagnosed on the 1st of December 2003. And so he lived actually less than 2 years. He lived for 16 months. He passed away on the 9th of April 2005. And me being a doctor, I did everything possible, including getting a Section 21 drug from America that Discovery Drug approved. And, you know, he was in remission. I got him Professor Madiba, and the best colorectal surgeon in the world. I got him Dr. Bezos, you know, best surgeons, best everything, best chemo, best oncologist, but he succumbed. And during the journey, even before he got sick, on diagnosis, the relationship with my in-laws did change, and it was not for the better. But my husband stood by me and said he had made his choice. There were even people in my husband's family, siblings, that actually divorced this woman because she's not going to get you far. Because now, instead of chasing your career, you're busy looking after a crazy woman. And these are things that were said even in my presence. I've had to make peace with those things because they can be very toxic. Because in the African sense, even if they say, which they did say, you are very young, you can go and get married. We sort of don't need you. You know, it's fine. We're fine. You can carry on with your life. But in the African sense, you don't really divorce after, you don't really leave your marital home after you get widowed. So I'm still part of the family. So those things have been very, very helpful because sometimes they do come up. But I'm mature enough now to know that those things are said not because they hate me. Those things are said because of the pain that they were going through. So to a point where my children, 2 years ago, were told, because they felt that they were old enough to know that had it not been for my bipolar disorder, their father probably would not have died from cancer. Yes, he did have cancer, but the mother, which is me, the wife, stressed him so much that he succumbed to the cancer. He succumbed from stress, not from the bipolar mood disorder. So those things are very, very destructive, and they happen to everybody. We all know that anyone who's been widowed, the husband has been bewitched. That's just a traditional thing. But you sort of think that if you're married to a well-educated family, it doesn't happen, but it still does happen. But that's a story, and that's my issue.
Yes,
and
yes.
I'm fine with that. It doesn't bother me anymore.
Beyond
and my
family,
children are fine because we know.
Yeah, beyond family.
I'm sorry?
I'm saying beyond family.
Socially,
The social
I have lost a lot of friends. In fact, I'm wondering where my friends are. But I lost even Osikri. Osikri. We were secret pals. We were like 10 girls, all got married around the same time. There's not even a single secret except for Peach. Peach on Facebook says hi, Zeus. The other secrets have sort of fallen. Even Logan Lincoln sort of fallen by the way. Okay. If you ask the it's like I don't fit that picture anymore. I don't fit the picture.
Do you think it is this, or is it's maybe that you guys have outgrown each other such that you no longer have common interests?
It's a combination of being a widow and being a crazy widow that sort of rocks the boat. Like if we're going on a holiday, it's not gonna be a smooth sailing holiday because we used to take holidays together. But that's just by the way. Also, I know they love me. They always say we're gonna invite you, and I know they will invite. They love me with all their hearts. Okay. But then there's also now family, my original family. I've got difficult relationships with my mother because she doesn't quite understand. And everybody is so close to their mother, especially at my age. I'm 48. And everyone is saying, oh, my mom, this, if my mom died, my best friend died. And I've been waiting for that moment where I can say that. And I've never been able to say that because she's that strict mother, remember? And she doesn't actually want.
And she's not expressive as well.
No, she doesn't want the nonsense. She wants things to be straight. She doesn't want things to be haphazard. So that's her not understanding mental illness. I've had very difficult relationships even with other extended family members. So it is not an easy diagnosis and it's not an easy relationship. But I must say, I do have friends that are watching today that have been with me for 31 years since first year medical school. They know I'm crazy. They come and bail me out at my worst moments. And for me, it's good enough. Those 2-3 friends that are here now watching, I'm happy with it. And I'm pleased with it.
All right. So Doc, obviously, when we're looking at optimal management of any clinical condition, now I'm a family physician. I must bring this thing up, So when I was doing my master's in family medicine, we used to talk of holistic approach to patient management, which is biopsychosocial approach, meaning biophysical, that is the drugs, ECTs, and whatever else that is used, to manage your chemicals and stuff in the brain. There is the psychotherapy part, which also deals with certain things, in your mental, or psyche, right? And then there's the social part, relationship between you and yourself, all right? Between Nozuko and herself, and also relationship between Nozuko and others. I do know that at some point, you went to, what do you call it, Baruch, in your quest to know more about yourself, because sometimes when we go through challenges in life, we need to sometimes take time to know who we are as a way of being able to then understand who we are to better manage or deal with the situation. You went through that process. Did you benefit from it in terms of knowing who you are?
Oh, yes, absolutely. In fact, I went through that process right at the beginning of my diagnosis. Remember, I diagnosed myself in December, and as soon as I got out of hospital, it was still being run from Durban. From the hospital, I went straight into the program. And the program basically is about finding your life purpose. Who are you? who are you? What are you born here to do? And when I got there, sorry, my son is knocking at the door, the little one.
Yeah.
Can I just tell him that I'm not done because I think he's watching the time.
All right. Yes. Yeah.
I'll come back in a second. Yeah, because now he's making noise.
All right. All right. We're still talking to Dr. Nozuko Mkabayi, who has been living with bipolar mood disorder for 22 years. She has been sharing her journey as a medical doctor who has been living with bipolar mood disorder. She's taking us through experiences that she has had that are quite negative from a work perspective. She's also told us about experiences in the social settings, that also have been quite negative, but also the other side, she has developed very strong relationships with people, some of those she has been with as friends from first year at medical school, people who are still with her even today. So we are at a point now where we are looking at, besides the pharmacotherapy that she has been receiving, from the psychiatrists that have been looking after her, what other interventions have benefited her? So we were talking around, psychotherapy. She's had, psychotherapy from clinical psychologists, but also we were talking about social health interventions, to improve her relationship with herself and relationship with others. Yes, Doc, we can proceed on that point of, you trying to get to know who Nozuko is, what is her mission here on earth, and other things. So quickly, what did you get out of that program?
All right. Out of that, I actually discovered that I'm a healer by nature. This is what I was born to do. And it's something that I'd always known, because you said my father, education was driven from a young age. My father from the age of 4 told me, you are a doctor. And I knew I was going to be a doctor. My teachers emphasize it. And I've always been a healer. I'm an empath. I feel for people. But what I learned there was that my healing went beyond bio. My healing went psychosocial. I didn't actually have to do a family medicine or do another specialty. I went through that process. And that process actually taught me that actually healing starts from the spirit. And if you heal the spirit, the mind takes care of itself and the body automatically takes care of itself, which is why then I went after that to explore what is called metaphysics. I went to America to the Deepak Chopra Center in San Diego in 1998, shortly after diagnosis. And I did a whole lot of other modalities of treatment that are holistic. So I'm now calling myself a holistic healer. So even in my pediatric practice, I don't just dispense drugs. I look at patients holistically. So that's how this bipolar diagnosis became a gift. And hence, I'm actually writing a book. In fact, I've written the book, it's going to be published soon, The Gift of Bipolar Mood Disorder, because bipolar mood disorder takes you out of the comfort zone. It makes you open up to things that might not have been possible. So that's what I got out of that process. And recently, I've also consulted a traditional healer. So there are other modalities. There are other things that you can actually do. In fact, mental illness for me, it opened up doors that were closed. Because at home, we were brought up in a Christian way. We didn't go to traditional healers. We didn't go to other faith healers. But because I wasn't getting quite the satisfaction from just doctors and psychiatrists. In fact, Dr. Mkize, actually, Prof. Mkize suggested that I go to medical school back in 1998 and find a book called African Spirituality. And I didn't know that book existed. So that opened up for me back in 1998 that there are other things that we're not taught in medicine.
Yes.
And were it not for the mental illness, I would not have known.
On that point, Doc, so I told you that when I was still training, we were talking BPS, biopsychosocial. At this moment, things have moved. Holistic now is biopsychosocial spiritual. All right. The fourth component of holistic is spirituality, as part of the whole. All right. And this came after some doctor in the US, Dr. Sumalski, in 2001, came up with this model of BPSS because he was looking after patients who were terminally ill. All right. And he was looking at what is the best way to manage those people. What would be the optimal way? And he tried different modalities, but he then realized that one thing that all of those people, responded positively to is when their spirituality, there was encouragement that they strengthened their spirituality because it gave them hope, it gave them meaning of life, it actually gave them resilience, and actually they were not so fearful of the day they will be recalled, when they succumb to the disease. So since 2001, holistic management of patients includes spirituality. And I'm clear, I'm saying spirituality, I'm not saying religion. Religion is just one part of spirituality where there's set doctrines and practices and stuff, but spirituality is broader than that. And African spirituality is one of those. In fact, that I've been talking and trying to get to enroll for a PhD, and it's actually around role of African spirituality in mental illness. All right. But let's leave it there. Yeah, so because you see, in 2013, May 2013, there was a release of the DSM-5, all right, which is the Bible of psychiatry for diagnosis. And for the first time, that Bible of psychiatrists has a new section. The section is called, it's a section that deals with cultural syndromes, okay? And these cultural syndromes are actually also cross-referenced to the orthodox diagnosis, on the earlier sections of the DSM-5, okay? Yeah. But when you go through those cultural syndromes, what you find is that it's largely syndromes from Asia and also syndromes from South America, India, and there's very few. In fact, I did not find one that is from Africa. Okay. What that says is that as Africans, we need to research the cultural syndromes that are relevant in this part of the world and be able to look at how they can be best managed in combination with pharmacotherapy, psychotherapy, and other social health, interventions. So yeah. I hope that by the time I'm recalled, I will have made a contribution there. But the point here is spirituality is now a recognized, component in, I would say, in the management of a number of conditions, including psychiatric conditions, which is why they've got those cultural syndromes in that new section. Before then, they talked of culture-bound syndromes, in the DSM-4 TR. But anyway, let's move out from there. So, Doc, let's come back to the biggie. You say in 2016, there was a challenge, all right? A challenge relating to your ability. Okay, tell us about the challenge. Let me not go ahead of you.
Okay. After I did my reg time, then my husband passed on. I just done 18 months, and then I went to do the HIV research at pediatric perinatal HIV research unit. And then I went to the Eastern Cape. I was a director for 2 years, and then I missed clinical work. And then I went to specialize at Frey and Cecilia Makiwane under Walter Sisulu University. And then I did some research work for HIV there. And then, like I was saying, getting my exams was always an issue because I'd be prepared to write and then something would happen. I'd either not be well or the child would not be well and the husband was not there to support. So, and I think if I had been well completely without mental illness, I would have coped. But having small children with all these issues and sometimes I'd get admitted even. I remember I was admitted when I was in Bishop head office in 2007, although I was taking medication. So that's another thing that people think when you get admitted is because you defaulted treatment. Sometimes you ask about triggers. The work itself might be a trigger because the work of a doctor is very stressful. So after that, I came back to Johannesburg in 2013. I ran a small private practice. I worked in netcare, in emergency medicine. That's my other love. And then in 2015, I went back to academia, to Ingos Albert Lutuli in Durban, attached to the University of KZN. So I worked there as senior medical officer because by then I'd finished my training as a specialist. I was just left with the exams. So it was good, you know. I felt I was in tune with the staff there, and I just felt at home. And I liked the fact that it was a super specialist hospital. And remember that bipolar patients operate at a very high functioning level. If you look at the bipolars of this world, the Kanye West of this world, the Albert Einsteins, the Van Goghs, you know, we are those people that are extremes in a good way when we are well managed. So I like that thing about Albert's. It's got that thing other institutions don't have, where everything is computerized, you know, it's like super. And I was doing well, I felt. And then towards the end of the second year, it was up there 2015 in August. And then in December of 2016, okay, I had a psychotic episode, manic episode in April, but off the premises of the hospital. But I was supposed to be on call that day. But I felt I was not okay. I went and admitted myself in a private institution. I got back 2 weeks later. I was given some time off. But then I said to my psychiatrist, because I had not disclosed it, Albert Hotel, I said to my psychiatrist, maybe it's time that I disclose the condition, write the condition so that they know. But I did sense that when I came back, the mood had changed with my superiors. They were pointing out a few things that were not okay and saying you're making mistakes here and there. That way they were not really pointing out. So already there was a change after I came back. And in December, then I was called to the office of the head of department of the unit I was working in, which was a pediatric ICU unit, very specialized unit. And I was told that he had been watching me for a while and he felt that I was not coping, and as such, I needed to be let go of my duties. This is just to cut a long story short. And I almost fell off the chair because I didn't see it coming. And then he cited some days where I'd been sort of dazed in a ward round. And I'm like, dazed, but I don't take alcohol, I don't take drugs. And you'd say, you know, I'd be asking a question and be like, you somewhere else. So I feel, you know, and then there was also an issue of a baby, but I won't get into the technical issues of the baby, how he felt I should have managed the baby better. So he felt that I needed to be let go, especially because it was a super specialist hospital. They can't afford to have a practitioner that is questionable. So I needed to go and find a job else. And he had already spoken to the other colleagues, to the head of department, because I was just head in one unit. He had already spoken to the overall head of pediatrics in Albert, in fact, at the university. And they had agreed that the matter must go to the CEO's office. So that's how it started. And sorry?
You say the matter must go
after a long road
to
the CEO, because getting me out of the hospital, because I said, no, I'm not going to go because there's nothing wrong with me. And then he said, well, we don't have a choice. We were giving you a first preference is for you to relieve yourself of your duty or to actually resign. I was told I must resign. And I was even told there is a post for me. There was a post that would suit me. That I felt was an insult, was the post from a level 4 hospital, if you understand primary, secondary level, tertiary level, which is King Edward and Barra, and then a level 4, which is a quaternary hospital that is one of its kind. In fact, just to be accepted there is an honor, just work there as a medical officer. So from that level to be then delegated to a level 1, which was a hospital that was where babies from a level 2 and 3 were sent to take oral medication or to sort out their social issues. So they were not sick, they were just there. And I was told, no, you can just stay there and work there. And I literally died that day in that room because I felt, wow, after all my hard work trying to be a pediatrician, I'm going to end up in that hospital. I can't. So then started a whole year of me trying to prove myself proved to the hospital management at first, and to the Department of Health. It went from the hospital management to the KZN Department of Health head office, and then they felt that I needed to be reported to the HPCSA. They felt there was a term which I didn't know, and I got to know that there's a term of a so-called practitioner who is questionable clinically,
Impaired.
of an impaired. Then I was declared impaired, but then they had to prove the impairment, but they couldn't prove the impairment, and HPCSA did rule in my favor. After a whole year of back and forth, me seeing my own psychiatrist at King Edward because I couldn't afford medical aid then, me losing material things because first they took out medical aid. They took out overtime, and overtime is a major part of our salary. They said I can't work independent, so they're taking out overtime. And then over a few months, I'd find that my salary was decreasing because it was just a mess. And every time I'd go for this performance management system, I'd be told you're not coping, so we bring you a notch or bring you 2 notches. So I end up earning way less than an intern salary. And the responsibilities already with 3 children in good schools and all that. I really, it was my diet. So that year, that is 2016, December 2017. But then God being God, and I believe it was on God really, I managed on my own, because even with the people I was speaking to trying to get help, attorneys, they didn't really want to touch this case. They felt it was untouchable. At head office, I had somebody who was very senior, that was my classmate. He didn't want to talk to me. No one really wanted to assist. But then it was an objective decision that I actually was not impaired at all, and I was reinstated. But my professor still felt, after that letter that came on the 15th of December 2017, that they still had, it was their hospital, and they didn't want me there anymore. So they're not going to reinstate me, my benefits. So, and because I was stubborn, I said, I'm not going to leave. I'm going to stay. It's fine if you don't pay me. And then I moved from my home. I moved to Res. I stayed at Res, at the nurses' residence, with my child in my boarding school. So it was very, very difficult year for us, year and a half, because eventually I felt, after another 6 months, in July of 2018, then I am ready to leave on my terms. I'm not leaving because I'm being chased away. I'm leaving because I found a job that will work for me. So that is a story that has been very, very hard, and has affected my children a lot, because our lifestyle changed drastically. And as you know, if you get that bad, if your finances are that bad, you don't get credit for anything. So I'm now sitting now as a doctor who's been practicing for so many years, 25 years. I'm starting, it's like I'm an intern. I'm starting from scratch, because I had so many debts. I had to recover on the credit bureau. No one wanted to give me a car, no one wanted to give me a house. So because of that experience, I've been set back 2 decades materially. But I feel it's okay. I feel at least I've still got my profession. If I'd been really declared impaired by HPCSA, I know I would have committed suicide, Dr. Nyans. There were times when it's only the child was knocking on the door now, who's now 9, that I'd look at him, because he's such a playful child, and say, at least these ones are big, but what about this one? That child kept me going, because it walked in from crash and all over me and happy. And remember, I wasn't doing overtime anymore, so I couldn't hide. I was always at home, and this child was always around me. Even now, he can't wait for this interview to end, because he's got a story to tell me. This is the child that literally saved me. And now I say, oh, that happened to me, but what was the purpose for that to happen? It's happening to our senior doctors. They're depressed. Our interns are depressed. You say a joke in a ward round, no one laughs. No one laughs. Junior doctors don't laugh because they're so stressed. The situation is so stressful. The situation in our public hospital is so stressful that there's no time to breathe. You are in the tea room, you're outside, out of the patients, and I'm making a joke. You don't laugh. And I feel then our profession has got a problem. If now we are such a depressed profession, This is even before COVID. It's got nothing to do with COVID. So now I've become a mental advocate, and I define myself like that. And I say there was a purpose to my suffering, and my suffering was extreme. So if I can beat this, and you're talking about your anxiety, you're talking about your major depression, because the medical school itself is such a terrible environment that you get in there well and healthy, but a lot of kids come out depressed at 16. So you're talking about minor, they're not minor, but look at my story. My story is huge, but here I am. I'm picking up myself. I'm buying a house now. I'm getting a car now. I'm doing this now. I'm doing this. It's doable. So it's not the end of the world. So I feel my story has ended up in a good way.
Yes. Now, Doc, in preparation for this meeting, obviously, I mean, you had put up a post on Facebook about a few days ago where you shared a little bit about, the people who, you think reported you to the HPCSA that you should be, impaired, and so because of that, I thought, let me just look a little bit, on what has been the trends. Luckily, last year, I had attended a session where one of the people in the health committee of the HPCSA actually presented on the issue of impaired doctors, and, the good thing here is that, sometimes some people may be malicious and actually report you that you are impaired. But the process, though, especially if you cooperate, allows for other people who don't know you, who are experts, to actually, evaluate you and agree or disagree, with the process. Obviously, those people who don't, cooperate, then they are suspended. Then there's more formal processes and stuff. But what I wanted to share with you is that, looking at all the professions under the HPCSA, of people who are declared impaired, medical doctors are by far, and when I say medical, I'm talking about people who have got MPCHP. I'm not talking about people who are specialists, right? Medical doctors or medical practitioners is by far the group, followed by medical interns, all right? Followed by student interns, dental practitioners, psychologists. So in the top 5, actually 4 out of 5 in the top 5 are basically medical doctors at different levels, in the top 5, and when one looks at the conditions that make them to be reported, I mean, this was a period of 12 months. There were 225 medical doctors, but if you look at the diagnosis, substance abuse or substance-related and addictive disorders constituted 60% of the people who were reported, with impairments. Followed by other medical disorders, all right? But your disorder of bipolar mood disorder, 9% of the people who were reported were actually people who had bipolar mood disorder. And then depression, 5% of the people who were, reported had depression, and if you look in the top 10, at least 8 out of 10 in the top 10 were clinical conditions that are largely of a psychiatric nature, including, a psychotic, behavior, and trauma, stress-related disorders, and just 2, which is epilepsy and other neurocognitive disorders. So basically, medical doctors are actually by far the group that is normally reported. But the good thing is that the process itself, is such that whether it's the formal process or the informal process, there must be verification of the alleged impairment. And if
Yes.
people send you there without the necessary, they are sending you there hastily, it doesn't mean that it will fly. But also, even if it's proven, but there is a process to actually, monitor your progress. Every 3 months, you submit a report. If you cooperated from your chosen specialist and the one that's chosen by HPCSA for the first year, every quarter. The following year, if you are cooperating still, every 6 months. And then on the third year, actually once a year, and you could be allowed to practice whilst all of that is taking place. Or there may be a situation where they limit certain things. Maybe if you are somebody who's got a substance abuse challenge, they may limit you from prescribing certain medications, that are, like opioids and stuff like that. So for me, I'm just happy what you are saying, that you went through that process and you were actually found not to be impaired. But the question is, how many other people are reported? And just on the basis of reporting, even before it is confirmed, they are then taken through the kind of processes that you were taken through. And in fact, from a labor relations point of view, I think that dismissal was an unfair, in fact, what we call constructive dismissal,
Yeah.
and with that, you could easily have got your 12-month salary sitting at home for constructive dismissal,
I
so
could have easily done that, Dr. Nyati, and I was advised to do that. But I felt, for me, it was bigger than that. And even after that, I knew I had 3 years for the case to go to court. And every time I sit and present at these big conferences, because I present for corporates, I get lawyers saying, we will make you a multi-billionaire. And remember, I'm so poor, I should be grabbing those millions. But for me, it's not about that.
No, yeah.
It's not about, it's beyond that. But now I also want to say, before we close, about this substance abuse issue with doctors. It's such a painful thing for me, because remember, I had a father who was a substance abuser. But a lot of the time, the substance abuse is not the issue. It's the mental condition, and the doctor is using the substance to self-medicate. And how then do the professors of this world and the deans of these medical schools and our heads of departments not know this? When we've been through the same psychiatry program, we know. But suddenly, when they're on the other side, they forget. But when it's a patient, you're sitting in your own private practice, you will do your best to support your patient. You'll say, patient, you're abusing alcohol, let me take you to rehab. In rehab, you're going to meet a psychiatrist who's going to handle your social pressures, who's going to handle your wife who wants to divorce you. It's supported at our medical institutions, especially academics, and this is a pain for me. It's not done. We are not the kindest profession to our junior doctors and to our students.
Yes.
We actually the opposite.
Yes. But in all of these Zooks, material things can go and you have a difficulty, but it's one of the many life experiences or life events that you've gone through and you have survived it. I mean, in terms of the rating of life events, by there's 2 guys from the US who came with this thing about 53 years ago, Holmes and another gentleman. They rate the scale, of life events to say a loss of a spouse is the worst form of, stress at 100 out of 100. Okay, that is the most severe. Below that is the divorce. Below that is, divorce at about 73 out of 100. Below that is Rahe and Holmes, rating scale. Below that, so it's the loss of a spouse, it's the divorce, it's the separation, and the 5th one is loss of a loved one. Okay, at about 60 something, out of 100, and then they go down like that. But when you look at the period from your diagnosis to losing your husband, all right, to, in fact, even before losing him, the stress of looking after him when he was severely ill, and you add all of these things, you add the work pressures and all of that, lesser beings would have decompensated long time ago. So, but you have actually survived all of these, Zooks. All right, you've survived it. Yes, in some situations you got to a point where you were even thinking, maybe you should actually terminate your life. But thanks to Yam Yam, you did not do that. All right, you did not do that, and you are now living proof that you don't have to. There's always support out there, but also you have a God who actually brought you here on earth for a particular purpose. And sometimes those life events, those experiences are redirecting you to focus more on the purpose of why you are here, and you've mentioned that you are a healer, that is over and above being a medical doctor, and you've studied metaphysics and this and that, and maybe, just maybe, there could be some redirection here, where you're going to optimize all these skills that you have collected over a period to actually heal people beyond, the orthodox way of healing people. All right. But it's important for you to strengthen your spirituality in the various ways that and don't give up. You are a child of God, and with a situation of you losing stuff, but there's also, the issue of restoration, from a spiritual point of view, but also, your underground crew can't be happy sitting and looking at these things, working obviously with the creator above. So the point I'm trying to say to you, you have seen the worst and you have survived. And with the resilience that you have, and the fact that now, over and above all of this, you are an advocate to deal with issues of stigma. You work with Pamela Wible, from the US, the doctor who actually is keeping track of every doctor in the US who is committing suicide. You work closely with those kind of people, so there is a bigger calling for you. Your experiences, they may have been negative, but there is a lot that you have gained out of those negative experiences, and leverage those and live your life to the fullest and make a difference in the way that it was intended, by the guy above. But anyway, what would you like to say, Doc, to people out there who are going through, mental health challenges, whether it is bipolar, whether it is major depression, whether it is substance abuse, which may be actually sometimes escapism from an underlying issue that had not been dealt with, or borderline psychotic challenges or personality disorders. So for people who are living with mental illness, today being World Mental Health Day, what would you want to say to the people, but also to the family members and friends of people who are living with mental illness?
Thank you, Dr. Nyati. You are actually making me want to cry. I've got tears in my eyes. You've really touched my deepest core by your summary, and because when you start speaking like that, I get the feeling that, and I feel it in my soul, that you are speaking soul to soul. You're no longer doctor. So I get it, I get it, and thank you. Do not mistake again. Today is the 10th of October, between, I got even late time to, I was supposed to be here at 3. I was supposed to talk. I couldn't talk because I was realizing the bigness of this day. 10 is completion, and there's another 10 completion, and there's another double 10, 20, 20. Actually, 10, 10, 2 10s, another 2 10. So God is saying, that's how I see it. God is saying, and this is a friend of mine who sent me this, because I was like, I'm supposed to be burying my sister, and I'm not there. Now I'm supposed to be doing this, and I know I have to do this, but my mind is not on this, and I need to make this. This is my moment. This book has been, everybody is saying, when is the book coming? This is my moment. But now I'm focusing on the funeral. People are sending me things from the funeral. And then she sends me this just at the right moment as I'm getting off the plane, about 10, 10, 20, 20. And it's saying, so for me, personally, elbali, iphelile, kugqityiwe ngelibali. So you're talking about restoration. Yes. And I say it is restoration, but it's even more than restoration, because when you're getting restored, or whoever had stolen. But now God is even doing restitution. Restitution now means you're getting even more. You're getting even more. And there's one other thing I want to say to abantu who have mental illness. You know, abantu mental illness, they've got big, life people. But is it to somehow, to whom much is given, Maya Angelo, to whom much is given, much is required, which is why I never took the department court. And now I'm sitting here working for government at government advisory level. And I'm saying, if I'd taken the very same government court, I'd never be in the position that I'm in. And now I'm loving the position that I'm working in because of the experience that I have. And I feel it will leave a lasting legacy, even for my children, even for the students that are coming. You know, it's a position of influence within government. And had I taken the government to court in 2016, 2017, which I really wanted to do, I wouldn't be where I am now. But to the people getting over mental illness, I want to say, importantly, when you don't feel well, you go consult. Your GP is your first point of call. If you don't have mental aid, you can't afford a GP. Government wait, 1994 between usinike clinics. You know, clinics even in the deep rural of the Eastern Cape, clinics are good. Primary health care in South Africa is one of the best systems in the world, believe it or not. You do not want to go to Bar, do not want to go to Joburg. You want to manage at the clinic, because at the clinic you get the best care. If you need referral, you get the next level of care. So go and consult over rights between. Yes, you might want to consult about Panzi and I believe in that, and I'm actually in that process now, German of consulting others. But is one thing if you're not feeling. Go so that you get a diagnosis or you get a referral. If only way date, you stick to the date. If you can't go on the date, then you call, or your family goes to the clinic and say, akakwazi as a name, so that you don't default. These are the basic things, but they are important. And then to family between, you know, people commit suicide a lot of the time because of lack of family support. It's not because the mental illness is so heavy. It's because now I'm telling you now, I've got two friends, and I'm going to mention them, whether they like it or not. Dr. Nandi Bakata, Dr. Fundi, you've heard her on the program. Dr. Dinyigo Kosa. Those are my rocks. They are watching. They are my rocks. Those women will kill for me. Even go on the because they will kill for me. They will slay dragons for me. So you need to also identify those people on a mental illness. In a circle, I've got others about in a circle, but abayana because they're also medical. So they are even able to medicine, shiftism for me, you know. So have your people or when you've got mental illness. And I want to say lastly, there's never anything big enough to commit suicide. Suicide should never be an option. Support. But abantu basemakhaya bethuna asiphambananga, we are just different. We're differently abled. We're not disabled. We are differently abled. And actually, if you get to know, you care to get to know Bipolar, especially, we are the most amazing beings on earth because we go beyond physical. And you might learn what to from if you just give us a chance.
I'm not. We're not done yet, Doc. We're not done yet. I'm just scrolling through messages that have been going through from your friends who are watching, you know, on Facebook. Usanga, all the way from the UK, he's watching, and he says, I was censoring you at a certain point, Doc, but subsequent messages zakhe are so positive. He even reminds you ngonozuba when novuyo novuyelwa, you were an inseparable trio, and then Utuli Mhlungi, who's also another person who's living positively with bipolar, who's an attorney.
It's tears of joy, Doc. Tears of joy. Yes. I'm saying it's tears of joy.
Yes. She's saying disclosure is tricky. The overt and covert discrimination in the workplace is real. There's a lot of education that still needs to happen. Most of us are in workspaces that have correct policies, and HR understands this. The challenge is the attitude of the leaders and the managers in the workplace. Your managers and your colleagues become the perpetrators, making the work environment untenable. Growing up as children of parents with an alcohol addiction does have a lasting impact on the children. So many things that we need to work through to become well and stay well. Mental health and wellness is like peeling an onion. This is Tulisile Mhlungu. Ulizi Tabane, who's the head of pediatrics, at Penolomi Hospital, University of Free State. She's watching. Utinyiko, one of your rocks, has also commented. She said she's watching. Utumi Dlamini, she's saying thank you for sharing your story, Nozuko Mkabayi. Utinyiko says the journey continues, Zooks. Never be afraid to trust your unknown future to a known God. All right. Wow. Tuli says again, she has already started. She healed me. A conversation with Zooks gives me hope. So I can go on. And, a lot of people have been touched by you sharing Zooks. I can't read all of these, but Utuli once again says it would be so helpful for us mental health users if you invited our partners, our children, and all the people who are affected by our illness, an opportunity to educate not just the mental health user, but those in our family who want to support us, but just do not know how. Ukapsi, that you went with, to Baruch, she's saying, I think one of the major benefits of knowing yourself is that you accept yourself. That journey of getting to know who Nozuko is, we have Melana now that you are actually flamboyant, and it's good that you are acknowledging it,
Yes.
Zainab Hatibu Reno, Hongera Kwenu, nice movie. I'm not sure uthi ubani, but all I'm trying to say is people have been engaged to your story. It will definitely make a difference. Umalemo Itumoleng Mukotedi Mapiloko, she's the daughter of Dr. Mujapilo at MediWell Center in Dainfen.
I know her.
Says, this is awesome. Thank you. Mental health and awareness, So really, Doc, you have actually, touched so many people through sharing your story. And you're going to get the video from YouTube, Zaktumelela Yona, so that those who could not be able to watch, they can be able to watch at their own time, But all I want to say to you is thank you for entrusting me with your story. Thank you for sharing to the multitudes who have logged in within South Africa and beyond South Africa. And let this interview be an interview that you can always go back to and say, I spoke my truth. Other people may not have liked some of the truth that I spoke, but I was authentic.
Yeah.
I spoke my truth, and take it or leave it. Those who want to be part of your journey will continue to be part of your journey. Those who feel you are too much because you have energy levels that fluctuate from extremes, and sometimes you make decisions that may be impulsive, well, they better understand that. but the person you are a beautiful human being. You know, I'm not talking about your external, you know, from the time ngo-1989 sikubiza ubaba apha, you know, uthanda ujayivela umili vanili,
no Sangqa, no Dr. Sangqa, DJ.
Umili vanili, and who's this young man from Rick Astley? Rick Astley, naye in 1989, and this young man, Bobby Brown. You used to love Bobby Brown quite a lot, you know. It's my prerogative. And I'm Bobby Brown, Whitney Houston. But the point I'm trying to say, you've been a beautiful soul. You've gone through challenges in life, but you are still standing. That's all that matters. I had my fair share. I also considered, you know, committing suicide, but because of my son, who was 3 at the time, I decided that it would be unfair on him. So you also, as a result of Uyam Yam, you decided it would not be fair, you know. So, but life continues. Who said life would be easy, you know? But if you believe, you know, on the person who brought you here on earth, who knew your journey even before you were actually out of your mom's womb, you know, if you continue to consult that engineer, you know, whenever you hit challenges, but also the intermediaries, whoever the intermediary is, you know, from your spiritual point of view. So with those words, Dr. Zooks, I want to say thank you very much for sharing your story. It has healed many people. It will heal many people. Soldier on. Restoration and restitution are on the way. And with that, I just want to say thank you.
Thanks so much, and thank you for everybody who listened in. And if anybody been hurt by what I was saying, it was not meant. Like we've said, Dr. Lila is my truth, and I'm learning to speak my truth. And honestly, if I learn the truth, set you free. There's a lot of truth that I was telling myself about my situation at work, at home, and now speaking from thank you.
Enkosi ke Mpondokazi. Ngubani isiduko sakho kane? What's your clan name?
Kumanja uMaskhalas. Manja uMaskhalas. Unoflate ibethwa ngabayaziyo kuphela. Dr. Fundi. Yiyo lento ke after 15 years akabikho flate indibetha ncam. Ziyazama kodwa azikwazi undibetha. After 15 years of being widowed. Ibethwa ngabayaziyo kuphela. Umshengu wayazi uba ibethwa njani iflate yaphaya kwaManjanja kawuba odadewethu abatshadanga. Nodade uba wabatshati because flate zethu zibethwa ngenye indlela.
Yeah, but anyway, at the appointed time, that will also be addressed. So keep hoping, you know, keep hoping, Doc. Thank you very much. But also thank you to everybody who joined us for this conversation. It was rather long, but I hope we were able to capture the story that is befitting of World Mental Health Day. Tomorrow, I'll be having a psychiatrist as my guest at 4 o'clock. So we will then look more on the academic side and the role issues of mental health, you know, within South Africa. You know, are we doing enough as a country? You know, there's the history of Isidimeni, there's the history of the Frontier Hospital in the Eastern Cape, there is COVID-19 and all that it has brought from a mental health point of view. So I'll be discussing all of those things with a specialist psychiatrist tomorrow. So those who don't have anything to do tomorrow, let's meet again tomorrow. Thank you very much to everybody.
Thank you. And
all right.